Story 1 of 38. Sha'Carri Richardson wins Stawell Gift 120m handicap race from scratch in record time. Sha'Carri Richardson wins Stawell Gift 120m handicap race from scratch in record time. Here's what every outlet agrees on. Sha'Carri Richardson won the 2026 Stawell Gift 120m handicap race in 13.15 seconds from scratch on Monday, setting a new record for the event. Charlotte Nielsen finished second in 13.20 seconds, SBS, Guardian, The Age, ABC, while Chiara Santiglia took third in 13.36 seconds, Guardian. Richardson became the third woman to win the Stawell Gift from scratch, Guardian, The Age, ABC. Richardson's boyfriend, Christian Coleman, did not advance to the men's 120-meter final, finishing fifth in his semi-final off scratch, Guardian, The Age. The men's 120-meter final was won by Olufemi Komolafe in 11.93 seconds, SBS, Guardian, The Age, with Jake Ireland second in 12.07 seconds, SBS, Guardian. But not all outlets told the same story. SBS reports Komolafe's time as 11.93 seconds, while The Guardian initially reported 12.03 seconds before correcting to 11.93 seconds in later articles. The Guardian reports Richardson's semi-final time as 13.52 seconds, but ABC reports it as 13.815 seconds. The Guardian states Nielsen's final time was 13.20 seconds, while ABC reports Nielsen's heat time as 13.32 seconds, not her final time. This story was covered by ABC News, The Guardian, SBS News, and The Age. Story 2 of 38. Australia's 2026 Daylight Saving Time change ending in April. Australia's 2026 Daylight Saving Time change ending in April. Here's what every outlet agrees on. Daylight saving ends in Australia on Sunday, April 5, 2026, at 3 a.m. Australian Eastern Daylight Time, when clocks turn back 1 hour to 2 a.m. Australian Eastern Standard Time. States observing daylight saving include New South Wales, Victoria, South Australia, Tasmania, the Australian Capital Territory, and Norfolk Island. Queensland, Western Australia, the Northern Territory, Christmas Island, and the Cocos, Keeling, Islands do not observe daylight saving. Smartphones and internet-linked devices automatically adjust, but traditional clocks and appliances require manual adjustment. Daylight saving returns on Sunday, October 4, 2026. But not all outlets told the same story. News Kamau states the time change occurs on Sunday, April 5, 2026, but ABC does not explicitly confirm this date in its headline or text. News Kamau mentions a 13% drop in nighttime spending and 15% drop in public transport trips, which ABC does not reference. News Kamau provides specific health tips, gradual bedtime adjustments, morning sunlight, while ABC and Guardian do not detail these. This story was covered by ABC News, The Guardian, and news.com.au. Story 3 of 38. 13-year-old girl charged in Melbourne's antisemitic crime spree involving stolen vehicles. 13-year-old girl charged in Melbourne's antisemitic crime spree involving stolen vehicles. Here's what every outlet agrees on. A 13-year-old girl from the Bayside area was charged with 52 offences on the 26th of March, 2025, including reckless conduct endangering serious injury, multiple thefts, and threatening harm based on protected attributes. The girl allegedly drove a stolen black Hyundai sedan in Hampton, Ruponlia, and Caulfield between 25 to 28 March 2025, shouting anti-Semitic remarks and throwing eggs at pedestrians. On the 28th of March, 2025 at 7 p.m., the Hyundai allegedly swerved toward a group of Jewish families crossing Hotham Street and Glen Eira Road in Ruponlia, narrowly missing them. A 45-year-old cyclist was hit by a stolen silver SUV in Brighton on the 25th of March, 2025, suffering non-life-threatening injuries. The SUV fled the scene. A stolen white Volkswagen Golf allegedly rammed an e-scooter in Elwood just after midnight on the 26th of March, 2025, with the offenders fleeing and later being stopped by police using stop sticks. But not all outlets told the same story. The Guardian and ABC do not specify the exact date of the cyclist incident, but The Age states it occurred on Monday evening, the 25th of March, while others imply it was earlier. The Guardian describes the cyclist's injuries as non-life-threatening but does not mention the luck to be alive phrasing used by The Age's Brooke. The Age reports the antisemitic crime spree began over the past week, unspecified, while ABC and Guardian anchor dates to 25 to 28 March 2025. This story was covered by ABC News, The Guardian, and The Age. Story 4 of 38. Man accused of murdering sex worker in Melbourne brothel faces trial after charges reduced. Man accused of murdering sex worker in Melbourne brothel faces trial after charges reduced. Here's what every outlet agrees on. Michael James Chalmers, 36, is accused of murdering a 62-year-old sex worker named Yuko, real name Leah Jong, at the Rainbow Garden brothel in Footscray, Melbourne, on November 27, 2024. Yuko's body was discovered inside the Rainbow Garden brothel on November 29, 2024, after being left motionless for approximately 31 minutes following an altercation with Chalmers. Chalmers was initially charged with murder, rape, and constructive murder, but the rape and constructive murder charges were dismissed by Magistrate Vincenzo Caltabiano on February 2025. Chalmers pleaded not guilty to the remaining murder charge and will face trial in Victoria's Supreme Court, with a directions hearing scheduled for April 16, 2025. Security footage shows Chalmers allegedly grabbing Yuko in a headlock, forcing her onto a bed, and leaving her motionless before exiting the room. But not all outlets told the same story. News Kamau states the victim's real name was not provided, while ABC explicitly names her as Leah Jong. News Kamau reports the defense argued the victim had a dozen clients in the week before her death, but ABC does not specify this number. News Kamau describes the constructive murder charge as unintentional killing during rape, while ABC calls it unintentional killing in the furtherance of a crime of violence. This story was covered by ABC News and news.com.au. Story 5 of 38. Norwegian film The Drama starring Zendaya and Robert Pattinson about a couple's wedding crisis after a shocking secret. Norwegian film The Drama starring Zendaya and Robert Pattinson about a couple's wedding crisis after a shocking secret. Here's what every outlet agrees on. The film is directed by Christopher Borgli and produced by A24. Zendaya plays Emma, a 30-year-old woman who reveals she planned a high school shooting as a 14-year-old in Louisiana. Emma's partial deafness was caused by accidentally damaging her eardrum while handling her father's assault rifle. The film's controversial twist involves Emma's admission during a worst thing you've ever done game with her fiancé Charlie, Robert Pattinson, and their friends. The film premiered in cinemas on April 2, 2024. But not all outlets told the same story. Guardian Article 1 describes Emma's deafness as initially claimed to be due to an infection in infancy, while Guardian Article 3 states this was a lie from the start, no mention of infancy. ABC calls the film's ending unusually cheesy and oddly empathetic, while Guardian Article 1 calls it a little cheesy but does not use oddly empathetic. Guardian Article 3 criticizes Borgli's portrayal of Emma's teenage years as clumsy and borderline offensive, while ABC frames it as a complex hand that critiques American culture without outright condemnation. This story was covered by ABC News and The Guardian. Story 6 of 38. Australian PM Albanese addresses nation on fuel crisis amid Middle East conflict. Australian PM Albanese addresses nation on fuel crisis amid Middle East conflict. Here's what every outlet agrees on. Anthony Albanese delivered a rare national address to Australians on Wednesday evening, 7 p.m. Australian Eastern Daylight Time, via TV and radio, the first since Scott Morrison's COVID-19 address in March 2020. The address was triggered by rising fuel prices and supply concerns due to the Middle East conflict, with petrol and diesel prices experiencing the biggest spike in history. The Age, ABC, SMH, Guardian. Albanese announced a 26 cents cut to the fuel excise for motorists, effective immediately, and suspended the heavy vehicle road user charge to zero for 3 months. Thij, ABC, SMH, Guardian, Newscomau. The National Cabinet adopted a 4-stage fuel security plan on Monday, with Australia currently at level 2, no rationing yet. Thij, ABC, SMH, Guardian. Albanese urged Australians to fill up like you normally would but to switch to public transport if possible to conserve fuel for critical industries. Thij, ABC, SMH, Guardian, Newscomau. But not all outlets told the same story. Thij and ABC report Albanese's address was criticised for being thin or over-dramatised, while Guardian describes it as a mixed message but does not explicitly contradict the criticism. Thij and SMH both criticise Albanese for not admitting a shift in government messaging, but ABC notes Albanese's strategy was to avoid COVID-style interventions and mixed messaging. ABC reports Albanese's address was compared to Morrison's 2020 Easter backtracking, while Thij and SMH emphasise Albanese's attempt to avoid repeating Morrison's perceived missteps. This story was covered by ABC News, The Guardian, news.com.au, Sydney Morning Herald and The Age. Story 7 of 38. Death of Rohingya refugee Nurul Shah Alam abandoned by US border agents ruled homicide. Death of Rohingya refugee Nurul Shah Alam abandoned by US border agents ruled homicide. Here's what every outlet agrees on. Nurul Shah Alam, 56, a Rohingya refugee from Myanmar, died on the 24th of February, 2025 in Buffalo, New York, after being left in a Tim Hortons parking lot by US Border Patrol agents on the 19th of February, 2025 at 8:18 p.m. The Erie County Medical Examiner ruled Shah Alam's death a homicide on the 31st of March, 2025, citing complications of a perforated duodenal ulcer precipitated by hypothermia and dehydration as the cause. Shah Alam was visually impaired, unable to speak English, and wore only detention booties when left in sub-freezing temperatures, below freezing in Buffalo. Shah Alam was arrested on the 15th of February, 2025 after entering a residential backyard in Buffalo's Black Rock neighborhood, where he was tasered and charged with felony assault, burglary, and criminal mischief. Shah Alam was released from Erie County custody on the 19th of February, 2025 and transferred to Border Patrol custody before being dropped off at Tim Hortons without notification to his family or attorney. But not all outlets told the same story. Article 1 states Shah Alam was dropped off at a closed Tim Hortons, while Article 2 describes it as a closed location but does not explicitly confirm it was Tim Hortons. Only Article 1 names Tim Hortons. Article 1 does not mention Shah Alam's family preparing for Ramadan or their emotional state before his disappearance, while Article 2 details this extensively. Article 1 does not reference Shah Alam's plea deal or the specific charges he was reduced to, while Article 2 states he pleaded guilty to criminal trespass and misdemeanor possession of a weapon. This story was covered by The Guardian. Story 8 of 38. Columnist Ross Gittins recounts his 44-day ICU stay after near-fatal heart infection requiring complex surgery. Columnist Ross Gittins recounts his 44-day ICU stay after near-fatal heart infection requiring complex surgery. Here's what every outlet agrees on. Ross Gittins underwent an 8-hour heart surgery called a commando procedure or unidentified flying object operation. The surgery involved an extracorporeal membrane oxygenation (ECMO) machine costing up to $300,000 each. Gittins spent 44 days in ICU after the operation, with his heart stopping 5 times during recovery. He required a tracheostomy during treatment, which removed his ability to speak temporarily. Gittins developed peripheral neuropathy, foot drop, and lost 20 kilograms of muscle mass during hospitalization. But not all outlets told the same story. No contradictions found between the two articles as they contain identical text. This story was covered by Sydney Morning Herald and The Age. Story 9 of 38. Australian drug trafficking syndicate arrested over alleged cocaine and methamphetamine importation via Bass Strait. Australian drug trafficking syndicate arrested over alleged cocaine and methamphetamine importation via Bass Strait. Here's what every outlet agrees on. 9 men aged between 31 and 72 were arrested across Victoria and Sydney over alleged drug trafficking conspiracy. 8 arrests occurred in Victoria, Morwell, Glenroy, Cranbourne, Cranbourne West, Cranbourne South, Greenvale, and 1 in Sydney, St Clair. The investigation, named Operation Bruce Cremorne, involved Australian Federal Police, Victoria Police, Australian Border Force, and the Australian Criminal Intelligence Commission. The operation lasted 10 months and began after a commercial trawler sank off Victoria's Port Albert in May 2023, raising suspicions about its crew's movements. Police allege the syndicate attempted multiple times to rendezvous in Bay Strait with a mothership to receive tons of cocaine and methamphetamine. But not all outlets told the same story. The Guardian mentions 30 kilograms of methamphetamine seized in Perth and 41 kilograms of cocaine in regional Victoria as separate syndicate-linked seizures, but ABC does not reference these specific seizures. The Guardian does not explicitly name the operation as Operation Bruce Cremorne while ABC does. The Guardian states the syndicate allegedly tried to import tons of cocaine and methamphetamine without specifying a quantity, while ABC specifies up to 3.5 tons of cocaine. This story was covered by ABC News and The Guardian. Story 10 of 38. Donald Trump's criticism of Australia and allies over Iran Strait of Hormuz dispute. Donald Trump's criticism of Australia and allies over Iran Strait of Hormuz dispute. Here's what every outlet agrees on. Donald Trump publicly accused Australia, Japan, South Korea, and NATO of not providing military assistance during the Iran conflict at a White House press conference, Article 1, Article 4. Trump stated Japan didn't help us, Australia didn't help us, South Korea didn't help us, and then you get to NATO. NATO didn't help us, Article 1, Article 4. Australia has denied receiving any direct request from the US for military assistance to reopen the Strait of Hormuz, Article 1, Article 2. The Strait of Hormuz is a critical choke point for global oil supply, with about 1/3 of the world's oil passing through it, Article 1, Article 2. Trump threatened military action against Iran, including targeting power plants and infrastructure, by April 8, Article 1. But not all outlets told the same story. Article 1 states Trump described NATO as a paper tiger during the press conference, while Article 4 does not mention this specific description. Article 2 claims Trump's comments were directed at allies with a message for Australia to focus on fuel security, but Article 1 and Article 4 emphasize Trump's direct criticism of Australia. Article 1 reports Trump's expletive-laden post on Truth Social, while Article 2 and Article 4 do not mention this platform or the specific language used. This story was covered by The Guardian, news.com.au, and SBS News. Story 11 of 38. 3 Australian WNBA players selected in WNBA expansion draft for new teams. 3 Australian WNBA players selected in WNBA expansion draft for new teams. Here's what every outlet agrees on. Nyadu Puok was selected by the Portland Fire in the WNBA expansion draft as the 16th overall pick. Chloe Bibby was selected by the Portland Fire as the 11th overall pick in the expansion draft. Christy Wallace was selected by the Toronto Tempo as the 21st overall pick, ABC, or 23rd overall pick, Guardian. Sandy Brondello is coaching the Toronto Tempo expansion team. The WNBA draft for new teams will occur on April 13th, with the season starting on May 8th. But not all outlets told the same story. ABC states Christy Wallace was selected as the 21st overall pick, while The Guardian states she was selected as the 23rd overall pick. ABC mentions the Toronto Tempo is the 15th WNBA team, but The Guardian does not specify the team order. ABC states the Toronto Tempo's first pick in the expansion draft was Julie Alamand, but The Guardian does not mention this detail. This story was covered by ABC News and The Guardian. Story 12 of 38. ABC staff strike and new pay offer negotiations after 24-hour walkout. ABC staff strike and new pay offer negotiations after 24-hour walkout. Here's what every outlet agrees on. The ABC experienced a 24-hour strike last week, the first in 2 decades, involving over 1,000 journalists and staff. ABC 1000 plus Newscomau ~2000. ABC Managing Director Hugh Marks met with MEAA and CPSU delegates at a Fair Work Commission-mediated session this week. The updated pay offer includes a 4% annual pay increase in the first year, 3.25% in the second and third years, with back pay from October 1, 2025. The new agreement proposes clearer progression pathways between pay bandings, targeted performance bonuses, and enhanced leave entitlements. The ABC has roughly 4,500 staff, ABC only. But not all outlets told the same story. ABC reports over 1,000 staff walked out, while Newscomau states about 2,000 staff participated in the strike. ABC mentions the previous rejected offer included a 3.5% pay rise in the first year, but Newscomau does not provide details about the previous offer specifics. ABC states the previous offer was rejected by 60% of participating staff, but Newscomau does not mention this specific voting result. This story was covered by ABC News and news.com.au. Story 13 of 38. Review of JW Marriott Khao Lak Resort and Spa in Thailand. Review of JW Marriott Khao Lak Resort and Spa in Thailand. Here's what every outlet agrees on. The resort is named JW Marriott Khao Lak Resort and Spa. It has 424 rooms and villas, with a recent addition of 127 rooms and villas following a major redevelopment. The resort features 6 distinct accommodation wings connected by extensive waterways. Signature restaurants include Olive, Italian, Thai, Thai, Sakura, Japanese, and Drift, Mediterranean and Middle Eastern. Deluxe rooms start at $253 per night. But not all outlets told the same story. No contradictions found between the two sources. This story was covered by Sydney Morning Herald and The Age. Story 14 of 38. Barry Jones reflections on his career, political critiques, and personal recovery at 93. Barry Jones reflections on his career, political critiques, and personal recovery at 93. Here's what every outlet agrees on. Barry Jones is 93 years old and has an eye on the exit ramp as he reflects on his career and unfinished goals. Jones suffered a ridiculous fall in September last year while out to breakfast in Melbourne, resulting in a 3-point landing, head, right buttock, base of spine, and 40 days in hospital. Jones' leg had done an optus, his words, after the fall, cutting communication lines and leaving him unable to walk for an extended period. Jones met Vladimir Putin in 1990 in St. Petersburg, initially dismissing him as a colorless figure before recognizing his future significance. Jones has known or met every Australian Prime Minister since Robert Menzies' first term in 1939, give or take a few. But not all outlets told the same story. No contradictions found between the two sources. This story was covered by Sydney Morning Herald and The Age. Story 15 of 38. Perth man accused of attempted terror attack at Invasion Day rally pleads mental health defence. Perth man accused of attempted terror attack at Invasion Day rally pleads mental health defence. Here's what every outlet agrees on. Liam Alexander Hall, a 32-year-old man, is accused of attempting to bomb an Invasion Day rally in Perth on January 26, 2026 by throwing a homemade fragment bomb filled with ball bearings and nails, or screws, into a crowd of about 2,500 people. Hall's lawyer Simon Freitag indicated a potential Section 27, insanity, defence under WA Criminal Code, requiring a psychiatric assessment. Hall is currently detained at Western Australia's Frankland Centre Psychiatric Facility in Perth's western suburbs. Hall faces charges including engaging in a terrorist act, making or possessing explosives under suspicious circumstances, and intent to harm or endanger life. The device allegedly did not detonate, causing no injuries but prompting evacuations and widespread outrage. But not all outlets told the same story. The Guardian reports Hall's next appearance is on May 27th, while ABC and news.com.au report May 26th. The Guardian describes the bomb's contents as ball bearings and nails, while ABC describes them as ball bearings and screws. The Guardian states the device was designed to explode on impact, but this detail is not mentioned in ABC or news.com.au. This story was covered by ABC News, The Guardian, and news.com.au. Story 16 of 38. Western Australia faces severe mouse plague threatening agriculture and homes. Western Australia faces severe mouse plague threatening agriculture and homes. Here's what every outlet agrees on. CSIRO Research Officer Steve Henry reported mouse numbers exceeding 2,000 to 800 per hectare in Western Australian cropping zones, Midwest, Wheatbelt, Goldfields Esperance, as of 2024, with 4,000 burrows per hectare documented in some areas. Farmers are facing potential losses of $1 billion worth of grain crops, wheat, barley, canola, due to mice consuming freshly sown seeds, per WA Farmers Chief Executive Trevor Whittington and Steve Henry. Mice are invading homes in regional WA communities, with residents reporting unprecedented infestations, e.g., Peter Sekonorskas found a dozen mice in his pantry and consumed 7.5 kilograms of bait in 3 days, ABC, and Belinda E. Astuff noted catching 40 mice daily indoors during past outbreaks, Newscomau. Steve Henry stated mice breed rapidly, with females producing 6 to 10 offspring every 19 to 21 days and becoming fertile at 6 weeks, leading to exponential population growth, both sources. Farmers require federal approval to access high-strength mouse bait, ZP50, but are awaiting a decision, delaying control efforts, Newscomau. But not all outlets told the same story. Newscomau states farmers are unable to access ZP50 bait without federal approval, but ABC does not mention this specific regulatory hurdle. Newscomau reports 4,000 burrows per hectare in crops, while ABC focuses on mouse counts per hectare, 2,000 to 800, without explicitly citing burrow data. ABC highlights mice consuming plastic containers and milk cartons in homes, a detail not mentioned in Newscomau. This story was covered by ABC News and news.com.au. Story 17 of 38. Impact of RBA interchange fee cuts on Qantas frequent flyer points earnings and alternatives. Impact of RBA interchange fee cuts on Qantas frequent flyer points earnings and alternatives. Here's what every outlet agrees on. Debit and credit surcharges were banned nationwide on October 1, 2023. Interchange fees for credit cards were slashed 63% from 0.8% to 0.3% as compensation for merchants. The Reserve Bank of Australia previously reduced interchange fees in 2017, leading to reduced points earn rates, some by up to a half, and capped sign-up bonuses. Qantas Frequent Flyer program covers 50% of the Australian population. Qantas Health Insurance offers 140,000 Qantas points for new customers signing up by April 9, 2024. But not all outlets told the same story. No contradictions found between the two sources. This story was covered by Sydney Morning Herald and The Age. Story 18 of 38. US DHS partial shutdown funding negotiations and political deadlock. US DHS partial shutdown funding negotiations and political deadlock. Here's what every outlet agrees on. The Department of Homeland Security, DHS, has been without full funding since mid-February 2024, marking the longest partial shutdown in US history. The Senate passed a DHS funding bill on the 28th of February, 2024 that excludes funding for Immigration and Customs Enforcement, ICE, and parts of Customs and Border Protection, CBP. House Republicans initially rejected the Senate bill and passed their own 60-day DHS funding measure, which Senate Democrats vowed to block via filibuster. Transportation Security Administration, TSA, employees faced weeks without pay during the shutdown, causing security lines at airports to stretch for hours in early March 2024. Donald Trump signed an executive order on the 1st of March, 2024 to ensure TSA employees received back pay, easing airport delays. But not all outlets told the same story. Article 1 states the Senate's DHS funding bill was approved unanimously on the 21st of February, 2024, while Article 2 says it was passed on the 28th of February, 2024. Article 1 claims the Senate's DHS funding bill was already initiated via reconciliation, while Article 2 does not mention this specific phrasing or timeline for the reconciliation process. Article 1 attributes the delay to divisions within the GOP, specifically citing the House Freedom Caucus's influence on Johnson, but Article 2 does not explicitly mention this internal GOP split as a cause for delay. This story was covered by The Guardian. Story 19 of 38. Australia's Reserve Bank bans debit credit card surcharges and caps interchange fees. Australia's Reserve Bank bans debit credit card surcharges and caps interchange fees. Here's what every outlet agrees on. The Reserve Bank of Australia, RBA, will ban surcharges on debit, prepaid, and credit card payments from October 1, 2026, affecting MasterCard, Visa, and EFTPOS networks, mentioned in SBS, SMH, ABC, Thij, Newscomau. The ban is expected to save consumers approximately $1.6 billion annually in surcharge fees, SBS, Guardian, SMH, ABC, Newscomau. The RBA will lower interchange fee caps, from 0.8% to 0.3% for domestic consumer credit cards and from 0.2% to 0.16% for debit cards, SMH, ABC, Thij. About 16% of Australian businesses currently surcharge card payments, with roughly one-third of hospitality businesses using this practice, SMH, ABC, Guardian. The RBA estimates businesses will save around $910 million annually from reduced interchange fees, SMH, ABC, Newscomau. But not all outlets told the same story. The Guardian, Article 5, suggests businesses may hike prices by a one-off 0.1%, while the RBA, SMH, ABC, states this is an estimate but does not explicitly confirm the exact percentage increase. The Independent Payments Forum, quoted in ABC, Newscomau, Thij, warns that small businesses will pass costs to all customers including cash users, but the RBA, SMH, ABC, does not explicitly confirm this will happen for all businesses. The Guardian, Article 2, mentions the reforms will likely make big banks foot the bill for cost of living measures, while the RBA, SMH, ABC, focuses on interchange fee reductions rather than direct bank penalties. This story was covered by ABC News, The Guardian, news.com.au, SBS News, Sydney Morning Herald and The Age. Story 20 of 38. Toddler death after water rescue incident in Queensland. Toddler death after water rescue incident in Queensland. Here's what every outlet agrees on. An 18-month-old boy died at Tara Hospital after being pulled from water at a private property in Tara, Queensland, on Monday around 1 p.m. Emergency services were called to the property in Tara, about 300 to 320 kilometers west of Brisbane, shortly after 1 p.m. on Monday. The toddler was taken to Tara Hospital in a life-threatening condition and died hours later. Police stated the incident was not suspicious. A report will be prepared for the coroner. But not all outlets told the same story. ABC reports the toddler died in hospital hours later, while Newscomau states the toddler was still fighting for life at the time of their report. ABC specifies the toddler was in a life-threatening condition, while Newscomau describes the condition as critical but not explicitly life-threatening. ABC mentions the incident occurred on Queensland's Western Downs, while Newscomau does not specify this detail. This story was covered by ABC News and news.com.au. Story 21 of 38. Criticism and controversy over Trump's proposed Miami Presidential Library and related political branding. Criticism and controversy over Trump's proposed Miami Presidential Library and related political branding. Here's what every outlet agrees on. Donald Trump's presidential library is proposed to be a 50-story, Article 1, or 47-story, Article 2, structure in Miami, Florida, with a giant golden statue of Trump in the lobby. The land for the library was controversially gifted to Eric Trump's foundation by Miami-Dade College in 2023, with a federal judge initially blocking the transfer due to insufficient public notice, later overturned. The site is valued at over $67 million according to Article 2, no exact figure in Article 1 but described as valuable waterfront land. Florida Governor Ron DeSantis signed a law renaming Palm Beach International Airport to the President Donald J. Trump International Airport on the same day the library plans were unveiled. Eric Trump stated the library will include a replica of the Oval Office, an amphitheater, and a recreation of the controversial White House ballroom Trump is building on the East Wing site. But not all outlets told the same story. Article 1 states the library will have 50 stories, while Article 2 claims it will have 47 stories. Article 1 does not mention Trump's statement about the building being a hotel, while Article 2 quotes Trump saying, "I don't believe in building libraries or museums. It's going to be most likely a hotel." Article 1 does not reference the comparison of the library to despotic regimes' golden monuments, while Article 2 explicitly draws parallels to Pyongyang and Turkmenistan's gold statues. This story was covered by The Guardian. Story 22 of 38. Australia's fuel supply crisis amid Middle East conflict and global shipping disruptions. Australia's fuel supply crisis amid Middle East conflict and global shipping disruptions. Here's what every outlet agrees on. 53 to 55 ships carrying fuel are en route to Australia, arriving this month, ABC, 53, SMH Thej, 55. 3.7 billion litres of fuel are on board these ships, ABC. Australia's monthly fuel consumption is roughly 4.5 billion litres, ABC. 410 service stations are out of diesel and 145 to 193 are out of unleaded petrol, ABC, 410-145, SMH Thej, 410-193. The federal government halved the fuel excise by 26.3 cents per litre, ABC, with premiers agreeing to an additional 5.7 cents per litre cut until June 30th. But not all outlets told the same story. ABC reports 145 stations out of unleaded petrol, while SMH Thej report 193 stations out of petrol. ABC states 48 NSW stations are out of stock altogether, while SMH Thej do not specify regional shortages beyond national totals. ABC highlights industry skepticism, e.g., DI losses cancellations, while SMH Thej focus only on government diversification successes. This story was covered by ABC News, Sydney Morning Herald and The Age. Story 23 of 38. Australia's potential gas supply shortfall and government's threat to limit exports via ADGSM. Australia's potential gas supply shortfall and government's threat to limit exports via ADGSM. Here's what every outlet agrees on. Madeleine King, Australia's Minister for Resources, issued a notice of intent under the Australian Domestic Gas Security Mechanism, ADGSM, on April 2024, targeting July-September 2024 for potential gas export limits. The ACCC forecasted a potential gas supply shortfall of 12 petajoules for the third quarter, July or September 2024, including a 10 petajoule shortfall in July alone. The government will consult gas producers for 30 days, until mid-May 2024, before deciding whether to invoke the ADGSM to force export restrictions or secure domestic supply. The heads of agreement ensuring domestic gas supply expired at the start of 2024, and no new deal has been reached between the government and industry. Madeleine King described the notice as a precautionary measure to ensure domestic supply priority during Middle East supply disruptions, with no current export limits in place. But not all outlets told the same story. News Kamau states Australia's domestic market is well supplied with Australian gas and the notice does not limit exports yet, while ABC implies the notice is a direct precursor to potential export controls if producers do not comply. Newscomau emphasizes Australia will remain a reliable supplier of gas to international partners, but ABC highlights that the government's move may pressure exporters to reduce international spot market opportunities. ABC explicitly reports the Prime Minister's department is exploring a new tax on gas and thermal coal exports, which is not mentioned in Newscomau. This story was covered by ABC News and news.com.au. Story 24 of 38. Queensland Rail industrial action disrupts train services amid bargaining disputes. Queensland Rail industrial action disrupts train services amid bargaining disputes. Here's what every outlet agrees on. Queensland Rail cancelled all train services between Darra and Rosewood, Ipswich Line, and Central and Cleveland on April 1 due to industrial action. The Rail, Tram and Bus Union, RTBU, Queensland President Steph White announced 24-hour industrial action by train control members starting 12 a.m. April 1, targeting coal and mineral trains, not passenger services. Queensland Rail and unions have been negotiating enterprise agreements since January, covering approximately 5,600 rail workers. Planned track closures for critical works, including Cross River Rail, will disrupt services from April 3 to April 26 across multiple corridors, Sunshine Coast, Caboolture, Redcliffe, etc. Queensland Rail Chief Executive Kat Stapleton apologised to commuters and urged unions to abandon industrial action, citing over 30 protected industrial action notices received. But not all outlets told the same story. ABC states Queensland Rail did not tell workers not to attend work, but RTBU President Steph White claims workers were told not to attend by Queensland Rail. ABC reports Queensland Rail advised members they would not be paid if not performing full duties, while RTBU claims the government told workers they would not be paid at all for participating in minor actions. ABC and Newscomau both report the ETU's action would not disrupt services, but Newscomau does not mention the ETU's refusal to repair unplanned faults unless a safety risk exists, only ABC does. This story was covered by ABC News and news.com.au. Story 25 of 38. Tiger Woods' Florida DUI arrest and crash after rollover incident involving opioid pills. Tiger Woods' Florida DUI arrest and crash after rollover incident involving opioid pills. Here's what every outlet agrees on. Tiger Woods was arrested on March 27 in Martin County, Florida, for driving under the influence, DUI, property damage, and refusal to submit to a lawful test after a rollover crash on Jupiter Island. Woods told deputies he was looking at his phone and adjusting the radio before clipping a truck, causing his Land Rover to roll onto its side. Deputies found 2 hydrocodone pills, Norco, in Woods' pocket during the arrest, and he admitted taking a few prescription medications earlier in the day. Woods submitted to a breath test showing no alcohol but refused a urine test for drug screening. Woods was released on $1,150 bail after 8 hours in jail under Florida's mandatory holding period for first-time offenders refusing tests. But not all outlets told the same story. ABC reports Woods was the sole occupant of the SUV and exited through the passenger side due to the rollover, while Guardian's affidavit states Woods was unable to exit from the driver's side and climbed out through the passenger side, implying the driver's door was inaccessible. ABC states the truck damage was $7,254, but Guardian's affidavit estimates roughly $5,000 in damage to the trailer. ABC refers to a truck. ABC mentions Woods was 50 years old at the time of the crash, while Guardian does not specify his age in the headline or body text, though both confirm his age elsewhere. This story was covered by ABC News and The Guardian. Story 26 of 38. Police operation and fatal confrontation with accused child molester Desmond Freeman in rural Australia. Police operation and fatal confrontation with accused child molester Desmond Freeman in rural Australia. Here's what every outlet agrees on. Desmond Freeman was on the run for over 200 days before being located near Walwa, a town with a population of 191, near the Murray River. Freeman shot and killed Senior Constable Vadim de Wart Hottet, 35, and detective leading Senior Constable Neil Thompson, 59, at a rural property in Paupunka on August 26. Freeman was accused of serious historical sex offences and was served a warrant by 10 police officers on August 26. The Special Operations Group, SOG, also known as the Sons of God, used at least 8 snipers trained to hit targets from up to 1 kilometer during the operation. Freeman was inside a container-like structure in open country, and police used non-lethal flashbangs to force him into the open before he was fatally shot. But not all outlets told the same story. No contradictions found between the two sources. This story was covered by Sydney Morning Herald and The Age. Story 27 of 38. Cricket Australia omits Sam Consters from 2026 to 27 full contracts list due to poor form. Cricket Australia omits Sam Consters from 2026 to 27 full contracts list due to poor form. Here's what every outlet agrees on. Sam Consters was left off Cricket Australia's full contracts list for the 2026 to 27 season. Consters is one of 6 players, excluding retired Usman Khawaja, to lose full contracts, alongside Glenn Maxwell, Lance Morris, Jai Richardson, and Matt Short. Brendan Doggett was upgraded to a full contract after his Test debut in the 2024 Ashes series. Michael Neser and Todd Murphy regained full contracts for the 2026-27 season. Jake Weatherald retained his full contract despite averaging 22.33 in the 2024 Ashes series. But not all outlets told the same story. ABC states Consters was overlooked for the entire Ashes series, while The Guardian says he was not explicitly excluded but preferred over Weatherald at the time. ABC does not mention Consters' debut as unorthodox, while The Guardian explicitly describes it as such. ABC does not mention Australia A's trip to India as a potential opportunity for Consters, while The Guardian highlights it as a strong chance for him. This story was covered by ABC News and The Guardian. Story 28 of 38. U.S. military rescue of downed F-15E Strike Eagle crew member in Iran during U.S.-Israel war. U.S. military rescue of downed F-15E Strike Eagle crew member in Iran during U.S.-Israel war. Here's what every outlet agrees on. An F-15E Strike Eagle fighter jet was shot down by Iranian forces on Friday, marking the first U.S. aircraft lost to enemy fire in the month-long U.S.-Israel war with Iran. The jet crashed in Isfahan province, Iran, and both crew members ejected safely but became separated. The pilot was rescued within hours by U.S. forces using attack planes and helicopters, with the rescue team coming under heavy fire. The weapons systems officer, a colonel, evaded Iranian forces for over 24 hours, hiding in a mountain crevice at 2,100 meters elevation. The CIA initiated a deception campaign to mislead Iranian forces into believing the airman had already been rescued and was moving out of the country. But not all outlets told the same story. The Guardian reports Iran shot down a US A-10 ground attack aircraft in the Gulf with the pilot rescued, but this is not mentioned in other sources. The Guardian claims Iranian state media showed images of destroyed US aircraft in Isfahan, while ABC and SMH confirm the planes were destroyed by US forces to prevent capture. SMH and ABC report the rescue involved hundreds of special operations troops, while Thiege states it involved about 100 troops. This story was covered by ABC News, The Guardian, Sydney Morning Herald and The Age. Story 29 of 38. Travel expenses and affordability of Albania compared to other European destinations. Travel expenses and affordability of Albania compared to other European destinations. Here's what every outlet agrees on. Albania is described as Europe's most affordable destination for summer travel by the author in both articles. The author spent a week in Albania during late northern summer with exchange rates of $1 equals 55 cents and 54 Albanian lek, later updated to 60 cents and 57 lek. The author visited Albania with a friend named Johnny, who collected her from Tirana Airport in a hired car. The Tirana Marriott Hotel is centrally located within a football field in downtown Tirana, with rooms priced at €140 per night. The author spent €325 on hiring a car for the week in Albania. But not all outlets told the same story. No contradictions found between the two articles, as they are nearly identical in content. This story was covered by Sydney Morning Herald and The Age. Story 30 of 38. Trump appoints J.D. Vance as fraud czar targeting Democratic states with fraud crackdowns. Trump appoints J.D. Vance as fraud czar targeting Democratic states with fraud crackdowns. Here's what every outlet agrees on. Donald Trump announced J.D. Vance as the new fraud czar on April 2, 2024, via Truth Social post. 8 people were arrested in California on April 4, 2024, for allegedly committing over $50 million in Medicare healthcare fraud. The arrests were part of Operation Never Say Die, targeting sham hospice care facilities in Southern California. The accused included healthcare professionals such as nurses and a psychologist who allegedly used non-terminal patients as Medicare beneficiaries. The U.S. Department of Justice stated the arrests were tied to sham hospice care facilities in Southern California. But not all outlets told the same story. Article 1 claims Trump's DOJ is gutting the U.S. Attorney's Office and crippling their ability to prosecute fraud, but no source contradicts this directly. Article 1 states Trump's administration is home to the biggest fraudsters on earth, but this is an opinion and not a factual contradiction. Article 1 reports California has pursued over 100 criminal cases against hospice fraud, but no source disputes this number directly. This story was covered by The Guardian. Story 31 of 38. U.S. Supreme Court hearing on Trump's executive order to end birthright citizenship. U.S. Supreme Court hearing on Trump's executive order to end birthright citizenship. Here's what every outlet agrees on. Donald Trump attended oral arguments at the U.S. Supreme Court on February 21, 2024, making him the first sitting president to do so. The Supreme Court heard arguments over whether Trump's executive order could strip birthright citizenship from children born in the U.S. to undocumented immigrants or temporary residents. The 14th Amendment Citizenship Clause was affirmed by the Supreme Court in United States v. Wong Kim Ark 1898, and has been interpreted as granting birthright citizenship broadly for over 125 years. The Trump administration argues the phrase "subject to the jurisdiction thereof" in the 14th Amendment excludes children of undocumented immigrants or those with temporary status. The Migration Policy Institute estimated Trump's order would increase the unauthorized immigrant population by 2.7 million by 2045 and 5.4 million by 2075, based on 255,000 affected births annually. But not all outlets told the same story. Article 1 states Trump left the courtroom after the government's arguments concluded, while Article 2 does not specify his departure time but implies he remained for the full session. Article 1 emphasizes that a majority of justices remained skeptical of Trump's efforts, while Article 2 frames it as unclear how many justices might side with Trump without a definitive majority. Article 1 does not mention Trump's public statements about other countries selling citizenships or his stupid court remark, which Article 2 includes. This story was covered by The Guardian. Story 32 of 38. Donald Trump's escalating threats against Iran over the Strait of Hormuz and his Easter Sunday social media post. Donald Trump's escalating threats against Iran over the Strait of Hormuz and his Easter Sunday social media post. Here's what every outlet agrees on. Donald Trump posted on Truth Social on Easter Sunday, April 7th, saying Tuesday will be Power Plant Day and Bridge Day, all wrapped up in one, in Iran, and demanded "Open the fucking strait, you crazy bastards, or you'll be living in hell, just watch." Trump added "Praise be to Allah" to his post on Truth Social. Trump's original deadline for Iran was set at Monday, April 6th, but he extended it to 8 p.m. Tuesday, U.S. time. Mohammad Bagher Ghalibaf, Iranian parliamentary speaker, responded by saying Trump's recklessness was dragging Americans into living hell and threatened to burn the entire region. Elon Goldenberg, former U.S. Defense Department Iran specialist and now VP of J Street, stated Trump's madman theory approach was breaking down with Iran, as threats carry less credibility each time. But not all outlets told the same story. No contradictions found between the two sources, as they are nearly identical in content and reporting. This story was covered by Sydney Morning Herald and The Age. Story 33 of 38. Sam Kerr's potential transfer from Chelsea FC to Denver Summit in the NWSL. Sam Kerr's potential transfer from Chelsea FC to Denver Summit in the NWSL. Here's what every outlet agrees on. Sam Kerr is linked to a move from Chelsea FC to the NWSL's Denver Summit club. Network 10 reported Kerr has signed with Denver Summit after 6 seasons at Chelsea. Kerr's contract with Chelsea expires at the end of the 2023-24 Women's Super League season. Kerr posted on Snapchat denying the transfer rumors with the quote, "Don't believe everything you read in the media, man, they know a decision before me." Kerr has scored 110 goals in 153 appearances for Chelsea since 2019. But not all outlets told the same story. ABC states Chelsea won the second leg 1-0 against Arsenal, aggregate 3-2, while The Guardian does not specify the second leg result. ABC implies Kerr's ACL injury absence was long and her return slow, but The Guardian does not quantify the duration of her injury. The Guardian mentions Kerr's reduced role is due to coach Sonia Bompasta, while ABC does not attribute it to a specific coach. This story was covered by ABC News and The Guardian. Story 34 of 38. Westpac CEO warns of Australian recession risks amid inflation and geopolitical tensions. Westpac CEO warns of Australian recession risks amid inflation and geopolitical tensions. Here's what every outlet agrees on. Anthony Miller, CEO of Westpac, warned in interviews with ABC's That's Business podcast that there is a chance of a recession for Australia due to inflationary pressures and geopolitical tensions, specifically citing Middle East conflicts. Australia's inflation rose 3.7% in February 2026, down 0.1% from January, but remains above the Reserve Bank of Australia's (RBA) target band of 2 to 3%. The RBA has raised interest rates twice in 2026, most recently to 4.1% from 3.85% in March 2026, with Westpac's chief economist Lucy Ellis forecasting 3 more hikes by August 2026. The median house price in Australia is $933,137, significantly above the $600,000 to $650,000 range affordable on a median income of $90,000 to $95,000. Australians lost $2.18 billion to scams in 2025, with investment scams accounting for $837.7 million and payment redirection scams for $166.8 million, per the Australian Competition and Consumer Commission, ACCC. But not all outlets told the same story. ABC reports Westpac's chief economist Lucy Ellis forecasts 3 more rate hikes by August 2026, while Newscomm does not explicitly state this forecast but focuses on market expectations of further tightening without a specific number. ABC cites Miller stating a single additional rate hike would return the cash rate to 4.35%, but Newscomm does not mention this specific rate target. ABC attributes the February inflation figure of 3.7% to a 0.1% drop from January, while Newscomm does not reference the month-over-month change in detail. This story was covered by ABC News and news.com.au. Story 35 of 38. Victorian government expands device ban in schools to include smartwatches, headphones, and all school types. Victorian government expands device ban in schools to include smartwatches, headphones, and all school types. Here's what every outlet agrees on. Victorian public and private, including Catholic, schools will ban internet-enabled smartwatches and wireless headphones from Term 1 2027. Mobile phones have been banned in Victorian public schools since 2020, with the policy expanded to all schools starting January 27, 2027. Smartwatches with notifications, internet connection, or recording functions will be restricted during school hours. Education Minister Ben Carroll stated the phone ban improved student focus, socialization, and reduced device-related incidents. Independent Schools Victoria CEO Rachel Holthouse welcomed the policy as supporting positive learning environments and student well-being. But not all outlets told the same story. THEJ reports the policy will be enforced through the Victorian Registration and Qualifications Authority, while Newscomau does not mention this enforcement mechanism. ABC notes parents' views on the ban are mixed with concerns about its breadth, but THEJ and Newscomau do not report this specific parental sentiment. THEJ states the policy will be unveiled on Wednesday, unspecified date, while Newscomau specifies the announcement was made on Wednesday morning, unspecified date, without aligning dates. This story was covered by ABC News, news.com.au, and The Age. Story 36 of 38. Australian government's temporary fuel excise cuts and their impact on petrol prices amid Middle East conflict. Australian government's temporary fuel excise cuts and their impact on petrol prices amid Middle East conflict. Here's what every outlet agrees on. The federal government halved the fuel excise on petrol and diesel by 26.3 cents per litre effective April 1, 2024, reducing the tax from 52.6 cents to 26.3 cents per litre for 3 months until June 30, 2024. State and territory leaders agreed to an additional 5.7 cents per litre cut in fuel excise using GST windfall revenue, bringing the total reduction to 32 cents per litre until June 30, 2024. The average price of unleaded petrol across Australia dropped by approximately 20 to 25 cents per litre within days of the excise cut, with some cities like Adelaide seeing a 24.9 cent drop in unleaded petrol prices. Diesel prices also fell, with Adelaide recording a 21.3 cent drop and average diesel prices across capital cities dropping to around $3.05 to $3.10 per litre. Treasurer Jim Chalmers warned that the full benefit of the excise cut may take somewhere between maybe 1 and 2 weeks to flow through to consumers due to existing fuel stocks. But not all outlets told the same story. The Guardian and ABC report that petrol prices began falling immediately after the excise cut, while news.com.au found that most Sydney fuel stations had not yet dropped prices significantly as of April 1. The ABC and Guardian state that diesel prices have dropped by up to 21.3 cents in Adelaide, but the Guardian does not mention this specific figure for diesel, only unleaded petrol. The Guardian reports Queensland initially resisted the GST windfall deal but later signed on, while the ABC does not mention Queensland's initial resistance or the specific negotiations around the deal. This story was covered by ABC News, The Guardian, and news.com.au. Story 37 of 38. Australia's fuel supply crisis amid Middle East conflict and Easter demand surge. Australia's fuel supply crisis amid Middle East conflict and Easter demand surge. Here's what every outlet agrees on. Australia's fuel reserves as of Easter weekend: 39 days of petrol, 29 days of diesel, and 30 days of jet fuel. ABC, Guardian, News Corp Australia. Over 50 ships carrying fuel were en route to Australia to replenish supplies. Guardian, News Corp Australia, ABC. New South Wales had the highest number of service stations without diesel, with 150 to 182 stations out of diesel. Guardian, News Corp Australia, ABC. Energy Minister Chris Bowen confirmed fuel supplies were secured well into May with no cancellations of contracted shipments. ABC, News Corp Australia. Viva Energy reported a 30% increase in diesel demand compared to the same period last year. ABC, News Corp Australia. But not all outlets told the same story. The Guardian reported 150 NSW stations were without diesel on Easter Saturday, while ABC stated 182 stations were out of diesel on Good Friday, with 150 on Saturday. News Corp Australia stated 184 stations in NSW were out of fuel on Thursday, while The Guardian reported 182 on Friday, no Thursday figure provided. ABC mentioned 36 stations in NSW were completely out of fuel, not just diesel, on Easter Saturday, but this detail was not confirmed in Guardian or News Corp Australia articles. This story was covered by ABC News, The Guardian, and news.com.au. Story 38 of 38. Climate change threatens Australia's superb fairy wren with extinction within decades. Climate change threatens Australia's superb fairy wren with extinction within decades. Here's what every outlet agrees on. The superb fairy wren was voted Australia's favourite bird in 2013 and 2021 Guardian BirdLife Australia polls. Researchers predict the superb fairy wren population at Canberra's Australian National Botanic Gardens could go extinct within 30 to 40 years under intermediate and very high carbon emission scenarios, 2059 to 2062. The study found population extinction is likely to happen very fast within 30 to 40 years in intermediate and very high emission scenarios. The superb fairy wren suffered low breeding success during dry springs and reduced adult survival following unusually warm winters and hot summers. Researchers used nearly 30 years of weekly observations to track the bird's survival impacts from climate change. But not all outlets told the same story. The Guardian states the extinction risk is within 30 to 40 years under intermediate and very high emission scenarios, while ABC specifies 2059 to 2062 for extinction under those scenarios. The Guardian mentions extinction risk even under optimistic emission scenarios, but ABC does not explicitly state this. The Guardian does not mention the 50% mortality rate in the Botanic Gardens or the 70% mortality rate in Mount Ainsley's group, only ABC reports these figures. This story was covered by ABC News and The Guardian.